was the hero's teacher. Lucia had heard that the hero's boss was also a golem master. Edrica could evaluate him from a technical perspective, and since even the hero highly respected him, he might also be someone of great virtue and character. If the princess said so much, Edrica wanted to see whether his ability was real or just a bluff. After successfully meeting Horus, Edrica asked him to go to the underground palace because she wanted to see his ability in the magical power room there, and it was an official government request. Edrica placed back the cup, which was partially drunk, on the table while confirming Horus's suspicion. Langia, who appeared behind Horus, also asked permission to come and observe. Edrica did not mind and even invited her to join. They immediately headed to the palace basement. There might be many things inside, but not many could be candidates, meaning most likely it was the power source for the mana pipe, like a magical device owned in the house which could be used to light lamps and start fires. They were powered by mana supplied from an external source. And if monster coins were loaded into the core component, the coins would be converted into energy, making daily life easier. So Edrica was responsible for maintaining all this. Because Horus was a golem expert, it also allowed her to understand how to use magical tools. Edrica thought it best to assess Horus's skills while they did this. Providing explanations was the minimum, but only so Horus knew her eyes wouldn't be deceived. That was why Edrica would be the one judging him. Horus only smiled calmly, receiving a cynical look from her which made the girl angry. While holding a lantern after descending the stairs to the basement, Edrica said she would give him a tour, but if Horus messed it up, she wouldn't forgive him. The young man immediately understood. Edrica showed the magical power supply room. The large object there was the main unit, so Edrica challenged Horus to operate this device if he could. Fortunately, Horus had prepared a similar one in the kingdom of Diamante, so he was confident he could do it. After all, the Dragonstone Kingdom only had one unit, unlike the large kingdoms like Diamante. So, at this time, the magic supply had stopped. Edrica added that it had happened since Horus was still at the mansion but hadn't realized it. However, Langia denied that the hero's current house had undergone major renovations. Although the main supply was turned off, the water flow still ran through it. Edrica was furious because she hadn't expected that. Terrace had done similar maintenance on the teleportation center used by Ruster Report, and that kind of thing would be easy for her. Horus then found an anomaly that the lamp hadn't even reached some rooms. Edrica grew more annoyed because she couldn't find any loopholes. Although theoretically possible, they had just acquired the large house. She really couldn't believe it. Edrica then changed her mind, having thought back and forth that maybe her student was truly exceptionally talented or maybe one of those types. There were indeed people who boasted, "My student or subordinate is very great, which means I must be great too." Well, she felt she would find out now. Now that was over, so finally Horus found the point. It seemed like the stick he placed on the table was a type that had a set of small objects packed together. On magical equipment, the core was made of specially purified iron so that magic could flow easily. If using the glowing powder Edrica took, they could test it. However, if using assessment magic, the magic flow might be misinterpreted, so she could not recommend it. However, Horus blew his glowing powder right into Edrica's face as she was testing, making her even more upset. This object was dirty. That was why it had to be repaired. Edrica exhaled to channel her power to fix it. It was originally pitch dark but now a little cleaner. Ideally, the color would change back to white. Originally, the color was only gray. If it had turned severely black, it would be impossible to fully repair. So Edrica did what she could to restore it to gray. She then scolded Horus, who just stood there like a fool, even though it was now his turn to try to repair the core. However, the young man refused and instead told Edrica to try once more. The girl was furious because Horus dared to give orders even though she was the one employing him. Now Langia also joined in persuading her to try again. Finally, Edrica gave in. Because he made her do it again, Horus really didn't think much about it. He then put all his ability into it again. But suddenly Horus helped her by placing his hand on the back of Edrica's hand, making her eyes widen in shock until her eyeballs almost popped out. That of course made the two people behind laugh satisfied as well. Edrica herself became more annoyed because they were teasing her. However, the core part held by Horus looked whiter, even whiter than the part she repaired. She immediately expressed curiosity about how Horus could do it. The young man himself looked calm while holding the core. Edrica had never seen it this clean before and it felt impossible. Horus said he just tried, even willing to guide Edrica through it. First, Horace told her to understand that magic seeks stability, not about making it something. It was a property that naturally took the shape it wanted. Imagine it as you wish and don't just imagine it turning white. Edrica had to command it to become white. After practicing, she finally made it whiter than before, but her body trembled. However, Horace praised her first attempt as quite good. Edrica herself promised to demand from him. Langia said she really understood that feeling of jealousy, truly amazing. Horace even knew that for 5 years, Edrica had been trying to restore the core's color back to gray. That fact made Edrica even more unable to hold her frustration, but that was the power of the hero's teacher. Whether Horace met Edrica's standards or not, that was another story. It was more than enough. Horace laughed and told her to bow to more regrets. If so, Edrica said she would make Horace show everything from now on and would stare at him sharply until his holes burned. She also promised to steal his technique, so she told Horace to better prepare. The young man liked her ambition very much and told her to do her best. Indeed, Horace's sly attitude was really annoying. Night came. Lucia came to the Chaos Stone Dragon's office to ask about Edrica's investigation results. However, what she found was Edrica snoring loudly at the table, unlike usual. She then asked the people there. A man said Edrica suddenly came back and said she needed to make preparations. That made Lucia confused. Lately, she thought Edrica had mastered things like this, so no need to bother, but now the girl became strange and enthusiastic, and that was how she made so many things. And somehow, Edrica became very skilled at it too. Earlier, Lucia mentioned that the hero's teacher appeared, and they suspected maybe he had seen something amazing from him. Lucia was very happy to hear those guesses from Edrica's friends. They then apologized because the power part was still under maintenance. So Lucia said it was not yet time and continued her good work. The princess then returned to Edrica, who was sleeping with the most peaceful face she had seen in years. While stroking her head, Lucia was sure Edrica must have witnessed something truly amazing. The girl even muttered, showing her victory to Horace, surprising Lucia, but then she smiled. Meanwhile, in the underground magic room, 4 cloaked figures were uniting the 4 ends of the core rod in a ritual. A fast-moving carriage amazed Lucia. The cart with the blue flag was very fast, and the cart was made using Horace's bearings. The soldiers even increased the load capacity by 30%. With this, the cost of transporting metal from the Lapis Kingdom's underground could be drastically reduced. In fact, some things like the cart's axle bearings have limits. No matter how much the specifications are improved, it won't get better. Edrica praised Horace's good work, but the praised one seemed indifferent. The young man then explained that improving transportation directly contributes to the entire nation. If it hadn't come this far, nothing would have changed. He also shared his experience in the Diamante Kingdom, where he had to move a large amount of supplies just to support everyone, making Lucia and Edrica curious. So Lucia said that even though Horace is an expert in documents, he couldn't possibly move large amounts of equipment alone. She knew a lot because the hero mentioned it at the World Council. They used a huge number of golems to handle all kinds of operations in the palace. Lucia estimated the number to be about 500 golems. Horace confirmed this. Although there are many people, most of them are refugees. Direct workers are very rare. Even though high-quality farming tools are provided, they also have to research and develop better carts to transport the food produced by those tools. Edrica didn't expect Horace to really succeed and called him truly crazy. Although the blue-flagged carriage was fast, it was still behind the red-flagged carriage, which made Lucia wonder. Edrica smiled with satisfaction because there seemed to be something deep in Horace's work, although the young man denied it. The new axle bearings have almost no friction, so the carriage faces less resistance. Even if the carriage itself is heavier, the horses will still feel the weight as lighter. There were 2 horses that looked a bit confused, and possibly this one just needed time to get used to it. Horace invited them to ride the horses as much as they liked. However, in fact, Horace built the equipment to make the bearings in just 1 hour. Honestly, that was crazy. Edrica said she didn't know what she saw in the documents in his hands and asked how the young man could find this. Horace admitted he just studied various things. A master golem is a mixture of earth element magic, magical tool crafting, and alchemy. Mastering even one is not easy. That's a lot of knowledge. Lucia was curious how Horace could balance it. As for knowledge, Horace just read all kinds of books, even those unrelated to him, with the belief that it might be useful later. But Edrica felt it was just a waste of time. So Horus said the Master Golem class was created by a genius who combined 3 different fields. If you know what someone needs from the start, then it's not so difficult. New technology is always a combination of various knowledge. To create it, they have to collect those pieces every day to produce what is desired. Saying you don't have time to waste is just something said by someone who doesn't have the ability to plan. That statement immediately struck Ederica. Lucia then reminded that Ederica herself had said that whenever she goes shopping, the fridge is always full, although it wasn't exactly what Ederica meant. Lucia really did not hold back, even though she was a princess. She then asked Horus to be himself and not act differently. Horus didn't expect such an easy request for him, although something felt strange to him. This country seemed to have no sense of social class superiority. When going abroad to study engineering, Ederica was also surprised by their cultural differences. For example, the biggest surprise was how they separated nobles and commoners in school. Whereas here, nobles and commoners were placed in the same classes regardless of their grades. That alone shows their different ways of thinking. The nobles in this country generally realize the struggles of the poor, at least in theory, but that's not how it works in other countries. Horus agreed because he had experienced it in the Diamante Kingdom. If the nobles grow up surrounded only by people like them, then whether poor kids are in their class or not, it makes a big difference. Nobles and children of big merchants might get fancy food all the time, and that's normal for them. But if there's a poor kid next to them, then they will realize that there are children who live on cheap school lunches every day. Horus admitted that made a lot of sense, so it's about culture. While looking at the documents in Ederica's hand, he then revealed that Horus's technique looked a little outdated. The young man did not deny it, because there was someone he admired as both an adventurer and a master golem. Horus then showed an autobiography he wrote a century ago that he had taken very good care of. The Book of an Adventurer, recounting his journey as an adventurer and detailing all the discoveries he made as a master golem. Horus greatly admired this person. However, the young man immediately put his book away when Ederica wanted to take it. He said it would be a disaster if it accidentally got damaged, and when called stingy, it made Ederica furious. If it's damaged, it would definitely be a problem because the dead book had hidden codes everywhere. If decoded, it said that the world was taken over 2,000 years ago by a group of 5 people. To defeat them, power from a master golem was needed. Ederica then began to understand that Horus mastered the amazing master golem technique because of something he kept denying. Horus hoped the girl understood his meaning after saying all this. Ederica was still curious about those 5 people who ruled the world 2,000 years ago and therefore lived very long. That was really abnormal. Horus then said goodbye and was about to leave, but before that, he advised Ederica that if she wanted to be stronger than he was now, she had to find something to admire. This world is full of people who have tried all kinds of things. Ederica has to see it and decide for herself. Miracles can happen on any path. In the end, it all depends on her. If she has time, Ederica promised to find out. If there are problems with the carriage axle bearings, Ederica asked Horus to come to her anytime. The large Kainkai or vein is a vast dungeon whose entrance is located in the treasure capital of Lapis, the capital of the Chaos Dragon Stone Kingdom. Monsters inside are defeated, dropping high-quality metals as loot. Some heroes turned their heads as Langia entered a room. Geodor said there was a noisy group. They were adventurers buzzing around, likely aiming for her holy sword. He laughed heartily because everyone wanted to see the sword. After all, they rarely got the chance to see a holy sword. Apparently, the adventurers were gossiping about the hero Langia, who attracted attention throughout the dungeon, which made Geodor silent because he had thought they were gossiping Abu. Him causing his 2 servants to shudder. They also heard that Langia did not come alone but with her mentor for training. Geodor then grabbed the collar of one adventurer because they dared to talk about some commoners there. The gossip of a mere adventurer had no effect on a prince from the Amadade family. Then he asked where Langia was headed. After being shown the way, he swore he would show them something interesting. Meanwhile, the crowd of adventurers flocked to watch Horus and Langia face off, using only wooden swords. Langia apologized, not expecting so many people. However, Horus said they could watch, so he told Langia not to worry. On the contrary, the girl was surprised because she thought Horus was a mysterious figure. But the power of the Demon King held absolute male dominance. If he caught his attention, then it would be the end for Horus. Langia agreed with Horus's reasoning. She then prepared to attack her mentor, but before the girl could reach him, suddenly Geodor came into the middle of the match asking about the hero's mentor. He asked Horus not to make him laugh with his amateur adventurer attitude. If someone like Horus was teaching her, he doubted the hero title was legitimate. Langia said Horus didn't need to respond and continued training. The spectators chased Geodor and his 2 servants away because they came to watch the hero's training. Some even threw sacks of plants at him. Geodor himself still couldn't believe that many people believed the silly story about commoners defeating the Demon King and saving the world. It was truly absurd. Then he drew his holy sword to fight while introducing himself as the eldest son of the Imadade country of the Diamante Kingdom, Geodor Imadade, the one granted the holy sword by the Sinaitica Church, and swore to tear off their masks himself. Horus, initially distracted by the holy sword, managed to parry Langia's attack as expected, leaving Geodor dumbfounded. Horus said he still didn't understand the agreement. Langia simply explained that Geodor was just angry because a group of commoners defeated the Demon King before the nobles could. He was just throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child. So that was the core of the problem. Langia's words made Geodor even more furious and immediately charged at her. No matter how much training, to him Horus was just training ordinary people. Defeating the Demon King was considered just luck, and the Demon King might have been hiding. And now Langia was lying, pretending to have defeated him. Geodor wanted Horus to remember the power of his holy sword. However, as Horus's sharp gaze turned to Geodor before the sword swing reached him, he told him to step aside, and the man was instantly thrown against the wall. His 2 servants immediately rushed to their master's body, and then Geodor said he always sought stability. They both stood stiffly, watching Horus stare at them. When someone concentrates mana into their eyes and gaze, the mana in the air feels fear and instinctively tries to move away. And because mana pulls the air around it as it moves, it creates great pressure. Horus forced that pressure onto him, that was all. For someone like Geodor, neither sword nor magic was needed. Just glaring was enough. Geodor was helped away by his servants, leaving the match, causing proud cheers for the hero's mentor. When a person's aura intensity rises, it is said that a color reflecting their true nature will appear. But now, Horus's aura was completely transparent. He defeated a holy sword wielder, a formally trained swordsman, just by glaring at him. Terrace once said Horus's eyes were like a cannon blast. Honestly, she might not be wrong. Then this time they really unleashed their respective auras. Langia already looked exhausted in a short time. Horus kept pressing her, saying that if she couldn't even enter like this, then there was no point in making her stronger. The girl immediately broke through, but the tip of her sword was caught by Horus. The strike was light enough, even though Horus thought he had explained it in the letter. Even though the Demon King is gone, there are still many places where one must fight. With the Demon King's absence who dominated men, if Langia still needed him to move forward, then something was really broken here. However, Langia said Horus was a bit too strong now, and becoming 100 times stronger than before was not fair. The young man apologized and pushed her back several meters, telling her to come again because there was still plenty of time. Langia agreed and prepared again. His power far exceeded Langia's reach as usual, making the girl sigh. But someday, she was sure she would stand beside him and step further. At the inn, Geodor was scolded by his father for what had happened, and told that he didn't understand his way of thinking. Even though it was his father who previously said that commoners were spreading rumors about the Demon Kings. Defeat and causing trouble. Still, accusing them directly like that was foolish. Moreover, the Imadade state owed 20,000 gold coins to the Ruster report. That was 100 times the family's annual budget. The Demon King had been defeated, so they had to repay the debt, and it remained even after receiving 100,000 gold coins in aid money. So Geodor thought he just needed to make Ruster report admit that they didn't defeat the Demon King. That way the world would treat it as an emergency again and grant special exemptions. However, instead of accepting those words, his father threw a glass which shocked Geodor. The person who acknowledged the Demon King's defeat was the World Council. He was sure his son wasn't serious about saying that to them. They should have negotiated to lower the interest rate, but thanks to Geodor's mischief, the talks fell apart. However, he insisted they were a noble family possessing a holy sword. Even the royal family would fund them. Unfortunately, the royal family only provided 200 gold coins for the annual budget, and even though the interest rate was only 1% a year, they could barely afford to pay it. and the holy sword even required a hefty usage fee to the Church of Sinaitica. All this happened because the Church of Sinaitica also owed a large amount to the Ruster Report and was extorting money from countries all over the world. At this point, it's not an exaggeration to say the entire world depended on the Ruster Report's coin supply. However, Geodor still went and picked a fight with a high-ranking member of the hero community. Geodor couldn't hold himself back any longer, grabbed the holy sword, and left the room, ignoring his father's calls for him to come back. On the way home, Horus, carrying a large sack, had already anticipated someone's presence. It was proven when he mentioned that next time he would try going deeper into the dungeon. That person immediately threatened him not to move. Horus was ordered to ask his student to cancel the debt owed by the Amadade house to the Ruster Report. Horus knew the person couldn't beat him directly, so he waited to ambush him. He complimented the effort. In fact, he clearly remembered the person's name was Geodor. Even though he wore a hood, the presence of the holy sword gave away his identity. Geodor then removed his hood and slashed Horus's sack from behind, scattering its contents. This wasn't a threat. Due to his status, he said his words were commands. According to Horus, the Ruster Report might immediately burn the contract, but the money they borrowed had been collected throughout their journey to defeat the Demon King. The Ruster Report earned that money by defeating powerful monsters without receiving help from anyone. Erasing that debt was the same as betraying everything they had fought for. However, Geodor didn't care at all, because obeying a noble's command was a duty for commoners. Even if Horus called it a hero community, that community started as an adventurer guild. Adventurers didn't have to pay debts if they died on duty. So Geodor didn't consider himself a villain, since the survivors were the problem. Horus then turned around and told him to stop spouting nonsense, but Geodor wouldn't accept that, claiming he was the only one with the right to give orders. However, now his body couldn't move at all. Horus reminded him that he had already explained in the dungeon that mana seeks balance. The human body stores mana in a space separate from the physical dimension. The holy sword strengthens the body by flooding it with large amounts of mana. Forcing submission through intimidation was no different from casting a paralysis spell. Only those who could withstand that intimidation and generate pressure of their own could draw their swords and move in front of Horus, and someone like Geodor was no match for a golem master. Geodor was terrified upon seeing Horus's clenched fist. He had learned nothing from the last time, even though he claimed to hate suffering. For people who refused to listen, the only cure was an iron fist. First, Horus would start with one punch, making Geodor's face contort in panic. Instead of stopping as Geodor wanted, Horus told him to be a real man and take the punch now. One punch sent him flying far away, even knocking his sword from his hand. Langia, who had just stepped out of the house, said she sensed the aura of a holy sword coming from outside. Then she realized her teacher had used the iron fist of justice after seeing Geodor collapsed. Terrace, who also came out, said Geodor was fine, so Langia could leave him be. Thanks to all the changes Horus had made to his body, being hit by him should feel the same as being punched by a golem. And people like that wouldn't learn unless they were beaten badly enough to stop repeating their actions. Langia was sure Geodor had said many things to Horus, but she wasn't worried about that sort of thing. When Horus ran the royal capital alone, he would receive hundreds of requests and complaints every day. If Horus got angry at every little thing fools said, he would go mad. The Diamante Kingdom originally assigned city positions to nobles. That's why commoners usually didn't come to compromise. But the Demon King Kingdom's emergency laws allowed commoners to fill official positions as well, and now suddenly, they all started saying things like that. Since commoners were solving commoner problems, Langia thought it was easier for them to talk. What Horus understood was that they paid noble salaries with taxes, so they should do what the commoners said. But when a societal issue arose, there was always someone who jumped to extreme conclusions. Then they started shouting made-up logic as if it were scripture. If only he could, Horus would beat them all senseless. Suddenly, a mother and her 2 children came bringing a basket of fruit. Terrace received it while thanking them. The little girl had even made some sweet treats for them. Even though they already had plenty of fruit and sweets at home, Terrace said it was a thank you gift. Horus had worked on the Mana space unit the other day. As a result, the city's magic supply efficiency had increased. The magical appliances that powered the city now needed only 20–30% of the magic stones they used to. The palace had officially announced that tax rates would be significantly reduced. The tax rates went down along with the process, so this was a kind of thank you gift for that. It seemed they had stockpiled first and then lowered them. Because the Dragonstone Kingdom had high transparency in government budget expenditures, it was easy to verify if one dared to try. After delivering the gift, they noticed someone lying in the grass by the roadside. It wasn't something children should have seen. Anyway, Langia said that Horus seemed a bit quieter lately. The young man confirmed and admitted he was still surprised by the difference in national character. Helping this country happened to align with his goals. Usually, when someone did something great, they expected at least some acknowledgement or gratitude. Maybe it was because no matter how hard Horus worked, he never received praise or thanks for his efforts in the capital palace. So now, he unconsciously didn't even expect to be thanked. The teacher's talent made him stand out and might have attracted the Demon King's attention. It was hard to admit, but Terrace figured they weren't really in a position to talk about that. At the official duties office of the Diamante Kingdom, specifically in the royal palace, King Barzal scolded Horus for doing too much. He held the backbone of the world's largest country, the Kingdom of Diamante. A soldier then arrived bringing news that fixed-position magic equipment in the capital had been damaged and asked what should be done. Instead of giving orders, he cursed the soldier for not knocking first. Another report came in that the axle of a food transport cart had broken and there were no replacement parts. It was hard to put it all on paper. This city had truly fallen. The city had fallen, but it only worked as long as the mana supply stations were properly maintained. Ever since Horus, who handled all maintenance, disappeared, everything had become a disaster. Most of the alchemists holding noble ranks who were supposed to maintain things were more focused on persuasion than technical skills. As a result, no technical expertise could ever develop. As a golem master, he might carry a dimensional storage tool at all times. No axle parts or operation manuals were left behind. There were hardly any people capable of managing his work well. As the king had suspected, all this prosperity existed only because of Horus. The general public in the open access district grew increasingly frustrated because their problems remained unresolved. If this continued, riots might occur. Magic tools worked the same no matter who used them, but golems were different. Their performance changed depending on their summoner. King Barzal then told the commoners to resolve the commoners' problems themselves due to the labor shortage. The soldier who wanted to protest was left speechless, as he was threatened to work 10 times harder. Regardless, King Barzal needed to be patient, as food supplies kept arriving without delay. If that stopped, they might as well abandon their title as the greatest country in history. Another man returned with urgent news about Giodor Amadade, the eldest son of the Amadade noble family, who approached the hero's mentor, ordered Horus to cancel his family's debt, and was promptly dismissed. Currently, the hero's side had no further demands. However, the Amadade family's debt was 20,000 gold coins. Even at a 1% rate, that would be 200 gold coins, their annual budget. That region had no major industries. King Barzal granted them a noble title because they had a holy sword, if he recalled Ko. Ironically, if they had spent that budget on public infrastructure projects, the outcome might have been different. He would prepare the 20,000 gold coins. Then he told the messenger to withdraw 20,000 coins from the treasury and use them to pay off the debt. He would also confiscate the remaining assets of the Amadade family under royal authority and relocate them to the border. King Barzal owed Giodor a great debt. That happened 12 years ago. During the Labyrinth flood on the eastern edge of the Diamante Kingdom, they had forced Giodor into an impossible mission. If not for Giodor's actions, he would have made a terrible mistake and would not have become crown prince. So this resolved the matter. No one else should try their luck. After looking at a piece of paper in his hand, King Barzal suspected that the 20,000 gold coins had safely reached the hero community, but merely seeing the receipt made his stomach hurt. Someone returned with more bad news, making the king lose all patience. King Barzal broke out in a sweat as he read a letter stating that the children of nobles were cursing in various hero communities and related institutions, and violence had erupted. It was as if they were trying to destroy the country. Fortunately, the kingdom managed to obtain statements from the involved parties. They said the Amadade family heir even drew the holy sword on the hero's mentor. However, the whole issue was considered resolved by striking him. And with the noble family's debt settled and the chieftain and heir exiled to a border region, the matter was considered closed. They had the noble families with children act as joint guarantors of the debt. Then they incited those children to cause trouble under the pretext that the commoners held heroes in higher regard than nobles. After that, the king would step in, pay the debt, and issue an apology to settle the matter. Therefore, the strategy of letting a few noble families collapse to resolve the debt problem gained support. Feeling mocked, King Barzil finally ordered a deeper investigation into the matter, wanting to understand directly how all this happened. But it had already been investigated. After the king arranged the order to prepare the 20,000 gold coins, apparently a study group had been held and led by the dukes. Those fools only looked at the surface. First of all, the hero's mentor had shown great leniency in handling the whole Amadade family issue. Moreover, King Barzil owed Giodor personal debt, so it was a special case. Furthermore, the total debt currently amounted to 10 billion gold coins. King Barzil had no idea how they had managed to accumulate that much, as their annual budget was only 10 million gold coins. Did they really think they could repay 100-fold overnight? Now it had become a major problem. The royal family had to pay it. The king would even have to bow his head to fix this mess. But he had no idea where to find that much money. So he screamed to vent all his frustration. Simultaneous attacks on hero communities and related facilities. Maybe they had gone mad when they did it. Honestly, when the Diamante Kingdom agreed to repay the 20,000 gold coins, Terra suspected something like this would happen. Smart people without imagination really do the most entertaining things. However, Langia refused and said he wouldn't go so far as to call them smart. They were cunning, but their vision was narrow. This time Langia agreed with Terrace, but the question was, what should they do about it? Undeniably, members of the hero community were being attacked everywhere, so Langia asked the total debt amount. Terrace said that to clear all this chaos with one payment, it would cost 10 billion gold coins, but there was no way they could pay that much. To make them pay, Terrace gave an example of taking something they wanted from what the debtor held. That sounded good. Knowing his master, Langia really wanted some metals that could be used for golems. He then proposed taking the antenna from the capital of the Diamante Kingdom. Terrace didn't even know something like that existed in the capital. Horus's golem control range currently only reached 3 meters around him, but with the antenna, he could manage the entire capital alone. Moreover, considering the master currently refused to build a large golem, Langia suspected building the antenna itself would be easy. However, Terrace interpreted it differently, believing that building an antenna like the one in the capital would be difficult, both in terms of materials and technique. The two then smiled, as they shared the same plan to take it.